Nigeria is passing through a challenging socio-economic phase with dwindling revenue for the government, high inflation rate, and a depleted reserve. It calls for a strategic economic framework from the new government. At the 2015 Eurofinance conference, keynote speaker Mr. David Cowan, Managing Director of Africa Economist, Citi Group, spoke on the topic Economic Update, Strategies for Growth in a Volatile Market. Mr. Cowan speaks to WebTV on the state of the economy, expectation of investors from the Buhari government, and critical decisions to be taken.
I'm not sure that Nigeria is at a crossroads, but Nigeria is at an inflection point, certainly, where it has to make some hard decisions going forward. Yes, inflation has picked up, the Naira has been under pressure, reserves are low, but none of those are irresolvable. I think what you're really waiting for a little bit is for a new cabinet to be in place, and then it will hopefully make some of those decisions. My answer to you would be that I still think that probably the starting point of this would be a little bit of further Naira adjustment. We don't think the Naira has to move hugely, but it still has to move a little bit beyond where it is. Certainly there is a standoff between the central bank at the moment and the market believing that the Naira should move a bit more and the central bank is still wanting to preserve it. But I think that allowing the Naira to move, yes, it would have some inflationary implications. Inflation will pick up a little bit further, but it would also start to help solve some of the fiscal issues, particularly, we'll see a meeting between the President Buhari and the state governors today. It's the states that are in a particular financial squeeze at the moment, and by allowing a little further Naira move would increase the revenue that perhaps can flow to them and resolve some of those issues. So I think, yes, we are at a difficult point, but allowing a bit of currency movement will probably help the economy. It'll lead to growth picking up going forward, even if it has slight inflationary implications.
Now, to the second one. Now, what are institutional investors looking forward to from this new government? You talked about it at your presentation that there will be likely the change phenomenon everyone is looking forward to. So what do you think investors should be looking forward to in this new government?
I think, well, you have to split out institutional investors to start with. So you have to decide, on the financial side, there's three very clear types of investors. So there's Eurobond investors who buy when Nigeria issued its debut Eurobond. There's equity investors, and then there's people who are prepared to buy into the Nigerian local market. For Eurobond investors, I think what people are really looking for from the government is a clear structural reform agenda that would allow them to have confidence that this money is going to be spent on infrastructure, improving growth. For equity investors, I think they're still, and for fixed income investors into the local market, they're probably still looking for a further exchange rate adjustment. They don't believe that the current Naira rate can be sustainable. So if you think about it logically, if you were to buy a Nigerian Treasury bill that's issuing, earning you say 12%, and you thought the Naira was going to adjust by 10% at some time, you're not going to make any money out of that, so you wouldn't be encouraged. So they're holding off to see whether the government either moves or the central bank moves the Naira, or the central bank can start to build reserves, which means that it wouldn't have to move the Naira. Having said that, look, there is still a slight technical outstanding issue in relation to Nigeria's membership of the JP Morgan Emerging Market Bond Index. Nigeria is still on watch. What we clearly understand is that the Nigerian government wants to remain in the index, and that the Nigerian central bank wants to remain in the index, and JP Morgan want them to remain in the index. So we think that that will be resolved. And I think, look, with a modest Naira adjustment, you would see significant flows back into the equity probably, and back into the fixed income market, the local government debt market.
There's a lot of talk of, can this new government really deliver? What should be the priority in terms of the economic policy thrust of this new government?
If it was me, clearly this government has campaigned on the issue of jobs, right? And so their priority is how to create employment, right? Nigeria doesn't actually have, as we've seen with the recent debate between Professor Yale at the National Bureau of Statistics and the government, a very high unemployment rate, but it has a very high underemployment rate, and it's an issue of how you resolve that. To me, still the easiest way to make Nigeria an easier operating environment is to make progress go back to fixing electricity. If it was me, it would be electricity, right? Yes, you can build roads, yes, you can build railways, those things all help. Yes, you could free up the ports, that's another important thing, make it easier to import things, but I still think electricity is the key to all this. And then in the longer term, education, electricity education.
And then finally, fuel subsidy removal is an issue that is resonating across the country. One country that has done this in the mint axis is Indonesia. What are the lessons Nigeria can learn from Indonesia? Will this be very effective at this time to remove fuel subsidy?
I'm not sure there's any key lessons you can learn. I think the decision to reduce the fuel price subsidy is really to bear in mind the principles behind this, right? And to be brave politically and make the decision and live with the consequences. The reality is that the majority of Nigerians don't usually benefit from a high petrol price, right? It's people who have cars who benefit. Yes, it has some knock-on effects in transport, but remember that the diesel price in Nigeria has been liberalized for a long time, so there's no real issue. On that front, for lorries and things that are on transport, I think you have to make this bold decision, and what I think is that you have to have a compact between the government and people who, when they see that now the government is not giving them a fuel price subsidy, are more confident that that money has been spent on constructive investment somewhere else in the economy and not just being lost. And I think that's the key element for this, for the Buhari administration. And I think they will get this right, that yes, we pay more for petrol, but the government is saving a lot of money now and it's putting that money to good work, to useful ways to drive Nigerian growth. And that's the element, the trust element, I think, that's the most important.
Nigeria, according to Mr. Cowan, is at an inflection point, a moment where tough political economic calls and decisions have to be made to navigate through a tough terrain.